First, I want to thank the prayer line and Dress the Kill for having me come up here, and Nora for asking me back in March to testify. And I want to introduce myself. My name's Savanah Smith. I'm 21, and I'm married with a two-year-old. And most of my trials was at a young age, 14, 15, and 16, and all through them. And first I want to, I'm nervous. I've been nervous about this from the very beginning, and I couldn't really understand why I was so nervous. And God started showing me the beginning of this back in March. He said, this was going to be the hardest battle you're going to have to go through, my daughter. He said, but I promise when it's done, it's going to come to an end. And through that, I was excited. When you get that word, you're like, okay, I'm taking anything. But when I started to go through it, it was so hard. It was so hard. I said, God, I can't do it. It was things that I battled back when I was 15 and 16 and had to look at again. And I said, why are you showing me this again? And I started realizing I had to go through the hurt and the pain and being alone all again to experience it so I could share it. And I want to start with, I was at 14, I started with bulimia. It's an eating disorder that I never even knew, never even heard of, never even knew what it was, but I heard it. And at a young girl, I was always a little chubby, and my sister was skinny, tall girl, and I was always compared to her. Like, I always compared myself. No one else did. I did in my mind. And I look at her, and she was everything that I wanted to be. And finally, one year, I said, I got myself on a diet, and I lost all my weight I wanted, and I was good to go. That winter, I came home, and I didn't want to gain it back. And I heard it, do this, it'll keep it off you. I tried it once, and it was just going to be a one-time deal. And somehow it got like a stronghold on me. And I could never get it off. And it was just like it got worse and worse, and it leached on me. And it started to begin to make me sick, where if I didn't do it, I couldn't breathe, and it would make my heart beat out of my body, and I'd have to run, and I'd have to go do what I had to do. And it was hidden as a secret for so long. My mom, sister, my dad, nobody knew. And eventually they found out because I got worse and worse and got sick. Their first go-to was maybe she's depressed, or maybe something's wrong. They put me on antidepressants. And I got on antidepressants, and I didn't know. I was 15. I'm 15 years old, and I don't know nothing. I don't know what's going on. Nothing's wrong with me. I'm like, nothing's wrong with me. I'm fine. I got on these antidepressants, and I started to get myself depressed. And I wasn't even depressed, but these medicines made me depressed. They made me so depressed, and so just at a 15-year-old girl, everything's big for him anyways. Everything's bigger than what it is. So now on these medicines, everything's 10 times bigger. And me and my boyfriend, we broke up, Josh, and I thought, oh, this is it. The world's done, and oh gosh, this is done for. But my biggest thing was I always wanted to get his attention. I'm like, well, maybe if I just do this, he'll come back. Or if I do this, he ain't gonna leave. He'll be too scared to lose me. Well, I was leaving my grandmother's house in February, the end of February. And out of wanting to seek attention, I took a lot of her pills, a lot of her medicine. And we was on my way home, and I didn't think it was really going to do nothing. I said, maybe I was just hoping to put me in the hospital. Maybe he'll say, oh, gosh, she's in the hospital. Is she all right? I got in the car heading back home from Georgia, from my grandmother's, and I looked over, and my mom looked around. She said, my girl, you want ice cream? I said, and I limped and fell over. And it was only God that I could show her what I took. And they rushed me to the nearest hospital they could on the road, and they took me there, and the man said, you gotta take her, you gotta take her. She ain't gonna make it, you gotta take her. And they air flighted me to Vanderbilt in Nashville to get me there as quick as they could. And I ended up in ICU for 3 days. And the doctor told my mom, he said, he come out to the room, he told her, he said, she's not gonna make it. He said, she's going by hour to hour. I was on tubes, I was eating tubes, everything on me, ventilators. He said, I give her, she's living by hour. He said, I'm sorry. And everybody else was hysterical. Now, my Aunt Nisty, she was my biggest prayer warrior. She prayed me through. She lifted my arms and prayed me through when I couldn't. And she went hysterical. And my mom, she had such peace. God give her peace. And she said, I want to go back to my girl. And the doctor took her back, and she laid hands on me. And God gave her a vision. And I told Aunt Nora this, and I told this to her in March. And she said, I want you to share a testimony. My mom give her a vision, and she seen me in a room, an auditorium. She said I was speaking to thousands of women. She said, and it was a place that Natalie Grant would speak at. And my mom loved Natalie Grant. She was obsessed with her at the time. I said, Mom, okay, that's good. After it was all done, and she said it was a place where Natalie Grant spoke. When I was telling Aunt Nora this, just in February, we was at Natalie Grant's concert in this very place, And now 7 years later, I stand at this very place where my mom had this vision. And after I got out of the hospital, I guess, when you do stuff like that, when you act out, and even if it was for attention or what, you still have consequences you got to pay. And they ended up taking me to a facility after acting out. And it was basically like a diffie care, like this is where you just go, until you end it. And then I ended up here, and I'm like, I was mad at my mom and dad. I said, what would you make me come here for? And never in your life at 15 should a girl go through it. You'd see things you never wanted to see. You experience things you never wanted to experience. I had a roommate that she was my person with me, and she said, what are you in here for? I'm latched. I'm like, I'm just in here for bulimia, nothing. What are you in here for? She said, I'm homicidal. I'm like, I didn't know what that was. She was sick. She wanted to, I'm like, where do I got myself? Where am I at? And I was isolated. They cut me off from everything. 10 days I was in this place, and never could I talk to my mom, my dad, see nobody. And at that time, my gosh, if you don't cry out to God, then when are you gonna? When are you? And at 15, I got into that shower at that place. I said, God, get me out. Please get me out of this place and get me in a sound mind. Please, Lord. And I got into that place, and I got out, and I started trying, but I was still seeking my will. I was still seeking it. But I wanted a little taste of him still. And I was so sick, I'd get onto the bathroom floor and try my hardest. I'd try my hardest to stop. And I'd say I can't, because I couldn't breathe. I just couldn't. My whole body would shake and tremble. And I got in there, and just after seeking my own will, I knew that I was just ending up in disaster. I was still just seeking my will. And I ended up, I was 16, I got married and got divorced all in 1 year. So now I've come home at 17, and I'm like, dear God, what else? What else am I gonna have to experience now? And I said, God, I don't want nothing. I don't want nothing in me. And at 17, you come home, you're like, my gosh, I'm useless. I'm useless. I'm divorced at home. And God started to show me, he said, I'm going to restore everything back that was stolen from you. And I started seeking him, and I didn't care if I lost everything. I just wanted him. I was desperate for him. I was desperate for him and only his way. And God started restoring back my joy in my life. And I got married that same year. At 18, I married my Joshua, and not only 6-7 months later, I got expectant with my girl. And I got expectant with my girl, and I got truly delivered from being expectant with her. My girl is my biggest deliverance. She's my biggest deliverance, and if it wouldn't have been for God blessing me with her, I wouldn't be here standing. And I thank God for where I'm at, and I thank for prayer, for when I couldn't lift my hands up, my family could. and they could do it. And Aunt Nora was a big part when I was in that hospital. She called and make sure to pray, and she stood in the gap. And I thank God for prayer, and I thank God where He's placed me, and I'm alive today and can stand up and be a witness.